to the governor, Representative Clark, all of the other distinguished guests here this evening. I don't think I've been in a room in recent years where we had this many heavy hitters. So I'm honored to be here, and honored that Representative Clark asked me to introduce him. And he didn't read my introduction, and I didn't volunteer to share it with him because he probably will not agree with everything I'm saying that I plan to say. I asked Robert, I said, how many minutes do I have for the introduction? And he said about 2. So about 2 could mean 2.5, or it could mean almost 3. So I'm going to take advantage of about 2, he says. But story first. This is not a part of my 2.5 minutes. I knew of Robert Clark before I met Robert Clark. His late brother Buddy Clark and my stepfather Sam Wilson served in World War II together. And as a young kid growing up in DeSoto County, I met Buddy Clark. And Buddy Clark was the first black man that I had met that had gone to college. And I was impressed with the way he presented himself, the way he spoke. And he also worked at the post office in Memphis. And my grandfather, who was a pivotal person in my life, said to me and my late brother Eugene, I want you boys to go to college, build homes and walls, and get a job at the post office just like Buddy. So I have been now an honorary member of the Clark family since I was very small, and then I heard about Robert through Buddy and a line of educators in the Clark family. So I am just absolutely pleased that I have this opportunity to introduce my friend Robert Clark in about 2 minutes. So what can you say about Robert Clark? Robert Clark, Robert George Clark Jr., living legend, pioneer, icon, trailblazer, teacher, coach, administrator, civil rights leader, farmer, mentor, athlete, long-distance runner, a good and decent man, a wonderful husband to Joanne, a wonderful father and grandfather, Holmes County's favorite son, the Lord of the Manor, and the honorary mayor of Ebenezer. Robert Clark was elected, as we all know, to the House of Representatives in 1967. And Robert Clark was isolated by his colleagues for 8 years. He was, in fact, the lonely inn in the House. Some of you who are my age may remember the Army's lonely inn, a guy named Pete Dawkins. However, Robert went from Mr. Outsider to Mr. Insider, serving as President pro tempore of the House for the last 12 years of his term. We all know Robert's role in the passage of the Historic Education Reform Act as chair of the Education Committee, distinguished record as a master legislator. But then Robert Clark was about access. Robert Clark was about access. He wanted to create access for all Mississippians. He has spent his entire adult life trying to provide access for all of the citizens of our state, in a state that worked at not providing access for a significant portion of its population. I just wish we could have done what Alan said earlier. I wish we could have captured the feeling in this room 2 hours ago when we were talking and having a good time with each other. I wish we could capture that feeling in our politics. We have come a long ways, but we have a long, long ways to go. In the life of Robert Clark, the dignity, the perseverance, the smarts, none of us know, none of us can imagine walking in Robert Clark's shoes from 1967 to where he is today. So the good feeling is great. But we live in a place where we are still not providing equal access to so many of our members of our population. Women, African Americans, Native Americans. We have a lot to be proud of. But then we have a history that we need to face. And I think in a very real sense. Robert Clark has demonstrated to all of us how to face that history. Robert Clark has demonstrated to all of us how to deal with that history. And I just wish, I'm a good Methodist, but I just wish that there was some way that at least one person who is hearing me tonight would say that I am going to model what I do after the work and life of Robert George Clark, Jr. Because, my friends, quite frankly, Robert Clark represents the best in us. It doesn't get any better than Robert Clark. Now, I have 30 seconds left, so let me use my 30 seconds. This is really what I want to say, because Robert Clark, while serving in the legislature, his first bride passed, and he had 2 young sons. Robert Clark really should be adopted for the Father of the Year or the Father of the last half century. Robert Clark did something that all of us should have done with our children. He took them to every meeting. He had them in the house. He took them to community meetings in Jackson. I would go to those meetings. Those boys would either be on the back bench sleep, or they would be doing something. But one thing I know, that they were listening to Robert Clark. They were listening to what was going on. Because how in the world does a single parent, and he had help, of course, but how in the world does a single parent produce a state legislator and a judge? Now, if that is not bringing up kids in the right way, just think if we had more Robert Clarks producing more legislators and judges, just think what a great state we would be. So I am so proud of my friend Robert Clark, because he represents what we all should be about. So, my friends, in my last 5 seconds, let me just say that we are a better place and a better state because of Robert Clark. Robert, you are the best, brother. You represent so much of what we should be all about. So I'm honored to present to you my good friend from Ebenezer, the honorary mayor of Ebenezer, Robert George Clark, Jr. Let's give him a hand, folks.
First of all, good evening to everyone. It is a pleasure to be here today, and I thank you for inviting me to this occasion where so many of my good friends, good Mississippians are here. And I thank Dr. McLemore for that wonderful introduction. But it's a pleasure to be here with you today. It is true that I was elected to the legislature in 1967. But when I was elected to the legislature, my motto of when I went to the legislature, and was my motto all the way through my service at the legislature. And it was pulling, working, and striving together for a better Mississippi. And that meant if you lived in the Delta, if you lived on the coast, or if you lived in central Mississippi. That meant that we should not be working for something just for one particular group or one thing. But if that one thing will help Mississippi, then we all should be together on that. And that was my motto there for 36 years, and it seemed to have worked out pretty good. And while I was there, there was things as Dr. McLemore said. When I first went there, that's fine because I am a Mississippian and I'm proud to be a Mississippian. But we just worked things out and we got things so that we could work together. So when I was elected, some individuals told me, quite a few, well, you going to the legislature, you're not a lawyer, you don't know nothing about laws. But one thing I do know what I knew something about, and that was education. So I went to the legislature and that's what I pursued. That was one of the things that I felt that Mississippi needed, and I know they needed. And that was one of the things that I worked on. And many of my colleagues called me the education legislator while I was there. And after working on that, working towards trying to make a lead in education, the 1982 Education Act was passed. That is the Reform Act that was passed when Governor William Winter was governor. And there was so many of my colleagues and individuals that thought we should not take the bill up. But we moved forward and passed the Education Reform Act, which was good. And another thing that concerns me about Mississippi, I know the quality of individuals we have, but whenever you see some national reports come out, some of those national reports don't look good, and that have really worried me. So, but now it looks like after all of these years of working on that, I serve on the Work Investment Board. That is a board that works with education training for the workforce in the state of Mississippi. Frankly speaking, I have been serving on that board ever since it was initiated, right after me leaving the legislature. But I am proud to say now, with the help of the governor, with the help of the leader of the program we have now, Mrs. Smith, I do see brightness in the future coming from that because we are moving in the direction that I've been talking about and pleading for. It looks like we are moving in that direction. Our State Department of Education is doing a real good job now. Is working with the vocational education programs that you have in your various high schools. What that really means, if there is any interest in your area, the State Department of Education can recommend a program to you that would be suitable. We would like for all of the children that graduate from high school to go to college. But we know that everyone is not going to college. So it makes me feel good when I know that the State Department of Education is working with our VOTEC program that we have in our high schools. And also our community colleges. I think we have one of the best education programs and vocational education of any state in the Mississippi. I'm not saying we have the best, but I feel that we have the best. And on a high school level, well, on that level, before I go any further, another thing that have made us have a step forward is because the governor of Mississippi is working with us. And as I said, I have been on this committee since it was organized, maybe 25 or 30 years ago. But we are making more progress in this workforce development program in the state of Mississippi than we have made during any time that it has been a program. And I want to let you know how good I feel about that. So now let us just hold our fingers crossed, as we would say, that things are going to begin to get better when we talk about the plight of Mississippi, because we are going to have individuals that is prepared to do the jobs in Mississippi, and industry is going to come to Mississippi. So I want to say to the chairman of our Workforce Investment Committee and the governor of the state of Mississippi, just keep on doing what you're doing, and you're going in the direction that I think is going to make me feel good. Thank you, and may God bless you.